Since man first set out to sea in ships, piracy has been a constant threat to commerce and personal security. As technology evolved, so did the methods and effectiveness of all seafarers, and pirates were no exception. During the period known as the Golden Age of Piracy, many men and even a few women became notorious, even legends in their own lifetime, due to their activities. One man became larger than life due to his ruthless application and reputation of plying his trade, and was the most wanted man in the New World. But was that fair? Who was Blackbeard? How and why did he become a pirate? How effective was he? Why is he perhaps the most famous pirate in history? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former history professor, Army and Marine Corps veteran, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History. Today, the name Blackbeard brings to mind piracy at its greatest point in history. Almost anyone you may ask will know the name, but let's see who the man really was. Edward Teach was born around 1680, possibly in Gloucestershire, Bristol, England, and nothing is really known about his early life. It is believed that he was one of at least two children of Captain Edward Thatch Sr., a sailor, and his first wife, Elizabeth Thatch. The family relocated to a plantation in Jamaica and lived as a respectable family near Port Royal, known as Santiago de la Vega. Edward Jr.'s actual name has been given as Edward Thatch, Thack, or Thatch, with different spellings. But since pirates rarely use their given names, his true identity may never be known. Blackbeard was believed to have been commissioned as a British privateer during the War of the Spanish Succession of 1701 to 1713, and the name Blackbeard the Pirate was not even known until 1716 when he began that career. After the war was over, most privateers lost their commissions and had to find other work. Blackbeard fell back on what he knew best. Blackbeard had served on a Royal Navy vessel, the HMS Windsor, in 1706 under the name of Thatch when he became a privateer. He started operating from Kingston, Jamaica, and was married to an unknown woman who supposedly died, but they had at least one daughter named Elizabeth, who married a Dr. Henry Barham in 1720. And Blackbeard's sister, also named Elizabeth, married a man named John Valescure in Jamaica in 1707. Following his release from service, he joined the crew of Benjamin Hornigold, one of the most feared pirates of the Caribbean. On July 3, 1715, a hurricane on the coast of Florida destroyed 11 Spanish treasure ships, scattering treasure all along the coastline. According to the records, the governor of Jamaica commissioned Thatch, meaning Blackbeard, and Hornigold to recover it for them. Hornigold and Blackbeard were successful, and Hornigold soon gave Blackbeard his own ship. With each pirate captain in his own ship, they were able to engage and capture more ships, and for a full year they wreaked a lot of havoc until Hornigold retired and accepted a pardon in early 1717. That was when Blackbeard captured a French merchantman and converted it into a 40-gun warship, which he named Queen Anne's Revenge, which became his flagship as he raided coasts of Virginia, the Carolinas, and in the Caribbean islands. Like most pilots, Blackbeard was a very shrewd businessman. He had to be. And to be successful as a pirate, he had to master the art of leadership. He knew how to recruit and keep qualified men, intimidate his enemies, and use his fearsome reputation to his best advantage. Blackbeard was also a skilled tactician and preferred to avoid fighting whenever possible, relying upon cunning and skill to achieve his ends. However, like most pirate leaders, he and his men were deadly and effective if the situation warranted. One of the most extraordinary and indeed strange relationships was Blackbeard's connection to pirate Stede Bonnet. Bonnet knew nothing about ships or even being a sailor, and even less about fighting and commanding leadership. His background was also strange for a pilot. He came from a very wealthy landowning family in Barbados and heir to a large estate. Being wealthy, he paid for a ship to be built, which he christened Revenge, and fitted her out as if he were going to be a pirate hunter. But the minute he was out of port, he raised the black flag and began looking for prizes. Stede Bonnet's lack of experience at sea on all of the required levels saw his ship crippled after a battle against a stronger ship. Bonnet, who had been wounded, and his remaining crew brought the damaged Revenge back to port between August and October 1717. Bonnet's incompetence saw his crew almost mutiny, so once in port, the pirates on board the Revenge requested that Blackbeard, also in port, take command. Seeing that even though damaged, the Revenge was a great and well-built ship, Blackbeard agreed. Bonnet remained on board, reading his books and walking the decks in his dressing gown. Blackbeard, now with two good ships, began hunting for prey in the Caribbean, Florida, Carolinas, and Virginia coast. On November 17, 1717, Blackbeard captured the large French slave ship La Concorde, which he converted into a frigate mounting the 40 guns. This was the ship he renamed Queen Anne's Revenge. La Concorde's crew were transferred to two of Blackbeard's smaller sloops, and they sailed for Martinique. Blackbeard may have even recruited some of their slaves and even crew members, which was customary, and this may be where he obtained his personal servant and closest confidant, Black Caesar, or freed slave. Those who declined the offer to become a pirate were left on the island and later recovered by the returning crew of the Mauvais Rencontre. One of the remaining sloops Blackbeard gave the French. But Queen Anne's Revenge was a powerful ship, and also fast, so it became his flagship. He then had 3 ships and over 150 pilots. This is when Blackbeard became famous throughout the Caribbean and the New World colonies. The French, Spanish, and English all knew him by his sobriquet and reputation, which was somewhat inflated, which grew with every passing month. Standing over 6 feet tall and broadly built, he also began his own brand of psychological warfare. One of his methods was to dress outlandishly, wearing a fur cap or a wide-brimmed hat, high black leather boots, and a long black coat. He also had a modified bandolier sling with 6 pistols fitted into it for easy access. He also wore colored ribbons in his beard and smoking rope ends that created a mystique of the supernatural. As with all pirates, Blackbeard used fear and intimidation, preferring his enemies surrender without a fight and without risking his ships and crews. This method served several purposes, such as showing his crew that he was smart and not willing to throw their lives away. It also showed that he preserved the valuable cargoes that could have been lost should a ship be sunk, and the captured ships were included in Blackbeard's ever-growing fleet, making him even more effective. Also, unlike many pirates, despite his reputation, if the ship surrendered without a fight, Blackbeard would take the cargoes and often let the ship leave peacefully, unless it was a ship that he could use. At that point, he would drop the crew off at a specific location or transfer them to a smaller ship. As with all the major pirates, Blackbeard had his own personalized flag, depicting a white, horned skeleton, representing death, holding a glass, making a toast to the devil, and a spear piercing a red heart on a black background. The speared heart meant that no quarter would be asked or given should a ship not surrender, and that alone was probably part of his great success. Blackbeard was soon back at it and placed his lieutenant Richard in command of Bonnet's ship Revenge. In November, near St. Vincent, he attacked the large merchantman Great Allen. But the merchant ship decided to fight, but after a duel of cannons, the ship surrendered and was moved closer to the shore. Blackbeard disembarked her crew and emptied her cargo holds, and then burned and sank the vessel. This encounter became very well known. The Boston Newsletter published the story of the battle and stated that Blackbeard was the commander of a French ship of 32 guns, a brigantine of 10 guns, and a sloop of 12 guns. On December 5, 1717, Blackbeard ships boarded the merchant sloop Margaret off the coast of Crab Island near Anguilla. The ship's captain, Henry Bostock, and his crew were guests of the pirates for about 8 hours as their sloop was ransacked. Captain Bostock and his crew were returned to the Margaret and allowed to continue. When the Margaret returned to St. Christopher Island, Bostock filed a sworn report to the governor, Walter Hamilton. His report detailed what Blackbeard and his crew had said during their brief captivity, that they had destroyed several other vessels, and that Blackbeard commanded a sloop and a large French Guineaman, Dutch-built, with 36 cannons and a crew of 300 men. His report also stated that Blackbeard's ships were headed to Hispaniola to ambush a Spanish fleet, which they believed carried the garrison payroll. Bostock also claimed that Blackbeard had questioned him about the movements of local ships, but also that he had seemed unsurprised when Bostock told him of an expected royal pardon from London for all pirates. Bostock also gave the first recorded description of Blackbeard as a tall, spare man with a very black beard which he wore very long, which was where his nickname originated. In the late part of 1717 and early part of 1718, Blackbeard and Bonnet went south to raid Spanish ships off the coast of Mexico and Central America, where the Spanish were well aware of the great devil who attacked their ships. Their expedition paid off, and in April 1718, Blackbeard had captured several ships and around 700 crewmen when they arrived in Nassau to split up the plunder. Then Blackbeard sailed north to Charlestown, modern-day Charleston, South Carolina, in April 1718, and patrolled right outside the harbor, capturing any ships that tried to enter or leave, and held the crews and passengers for ransom. The local population, knowing that Blackbeard was offshore, relented, and when he sent messengers into town and claimed they wanted ransoms for the prisoners and medicines for the crews, all of which were delivered, Blackbeard and his ships left a week later. On June 10, 1718, Blackbeard planned to careen his ships and scrape their hulls, but Queen Anne's Revenge hit a sandbar off Ocracoke, North Carolina, and he transferred his loot to another ship. The impact had cracked the mainmast and damaged many of the structural timbers. Also, the sloop Adventure, commanded by Israel Hands, also ran aground, and both vessels were damaged beyond repair, leaving only Stede Bonnet's ship, the Revenge, and the captured Spanish sloop for use. On June 13th, he marooned most of his men on a small island that was visible from the mainland. They were rescued and Blackbeard set sail for South Carolina. Upon reaching Charlestown again, he learned that Woodes Rogers had left England with a fleet with orders to hunt down all pirates. Blackbeard then sailed northward along the Atlantic coast, reaching Topsail Inlet in North Carolina. Blackbeard also considered the option of a pardon and possibly retiring. In fact, he was believed to have married a local woman in Bath, North Carolina in 1718. What was apparently discussed among the pirates was the offer of the king's pardon, which was available to all pirates who surrendered on or before September 5, 1718. The catch was that immunity was offered only against crimes committed before January 5th. This stipulation meant that Stede Bonnet and Blackbeard could still be hanged for their actions at Charlestown, but most of the provincial authorities could waive those actions and issue the pardons. Well, to test the waters, Stede Bonnet surrendered to Governor Charles Heaton in Bath, North Carolina, and he was given a pardon. He then returned to Beaufort to collect his ship, the Revenge, and what remained of his crew, where he planned to sail to St. Thomas to receive a privateer's commission, as war with Spain was looming. Blackbeard then arrived in Bath right after Bonnet received his pardon and left, which was ironically later revoked unknown to Bonnet. Blackbeard and Heaton had made a secret deal, realizing that together they could both get very rich, with Blackbeard being the pirate collecting the loot and Eden giving him legal protection. Blackbeard's pirates captured the French merchant ship Rose Emily, loaded with cocoa and sugar. They took the ship to Bath, North Carolina, and claimed they had found it abandoned, and they shared the profits from the sales with Governor Eden. Eden had officially licensed Blackbeard's ship, Adventure, as a war prize, so Blackbeard and his men could safely anchor in a nearby inlet on Ocracoke Island, from which they could attack ships. But when Bonnet arrived, he discovered that Blackbeard had stripped his vessel of guns, powder, shot, food, and water, and had marooned 25 of his crew, which Bonnet rescued. Infuriated, Bonnet set out for revenge but was unable to find Blackbeard. Bonnet and his crew returned to piracy, and they were captured on September 27, 1718 at the mouth of the Cape Fear River in North Carolina. All but 4 were tried and hanged in Charlestown. Blackbeard then settled in Bath and supposedly married the daughter of a local plantation owner, although no proof exists that he married anyone at all. What is known was that since war was coming again, Eden gave Blackbeard permission to sail to St. Thomas. Blackbeard, now using the name Teach, sought a commission as a privateer and took his older crew with him aboard the Adventure. For some reason lost to history, he had returned to piracy that August, and in the same month, the governor of Pennsylvania issued an arrest warrant for him. Blackbeard captured 2 French ships in the Caribbean, transferring one crew to the other ship and taking the remaining ship back to Ocracoke. When he returned in September, he told Governor Eden that he had found the French ship at sea, deserted. A Vice Admiralty court was quickly convened, presided over by Tobias Knight and the Collector of Customs. The ship was judged as a derelict found at sea, and of its cargo, 20 hogsheads of sugar were awarded to Knight and 60 to Eden. Teach and his crew were given what remained in the vessel's hold. During this interlude, Blackbeard stayed at his preferred location at Ocracoke Inlet, where he could see ships easily. While there, Blackbeard saw the ship of pirate Charles Vane, who had refused the offer of a pardon offered by Woodes Rogers. Vane managed to evade the English pirate hunters. He was also pursued by Blackbeard's former commander, Benjamin Hornigold, who now operated as a commissioned pirate hunter. Vane wanted Blackbeard to join him in the open piracy trade in the Caribbean, but his deal with Eden was too good to let go, but Vane understood. Teach and Vane spent several nights on the southern tip of Ocracoke Island, accompanied by such notorious figures as Israel Hands, Robert Deal, and Calico Jack. It was at this time, when legend has it, that Blackbeard married a young woman in Bath and had several children. This story was resurrected several times, and that may or may not be true, but he and his pirates provided the town with cash, black market goods, and manpower. The pirates had a safe haven, and Eden had protection and a steady revenue stream. But problems arose due to the local businesses having the competition of pirates operating both legitimate businesses as well as raiding the ships they relied upon for their livelihood, and then selling that merchandise back to the businesses at an inflated rate. The more prominent and well-connected business owners appealed to Governor Alexander Spotswood of Virginia, who agreed to help. He didn't like Eden anyway. 2 British warships were anchored in the Chesapeake Bay as Spotswood hired 57 of those men and put them under the command of Lieutenant Robert Maynard. In November 1718, Maynard was also given 2 light sloops, the Ranger and Jane, shallow draft ships that could navigate the treacherous shallow reefs and sandbars of North Carolina. The hunt was on. On November 22, 1718, Maynard's ships located Blackbeard's ships anchored in Ocracoke Inlet, with many of Blackbeard's men ashore, including Israel Hands and his crew. As Maynard's 2 ships closed in, Blackbeard's Adventure opened fire, killing several soldiers, Marines actually, and forcing the Ranger to drop out of the fight. The Jane closed with the Adventure, crashing the 2 ships together, and the crews fought hand to hand. Maynard wounded Blackbeard twice with pistols, but Blackbeard was still attacking with his cutlass. Just as he was about to kill Maynard, a Marine attacked Blackbeard and slashed him across the back of the neck. The next arc of the sword decapitated him. Maynard's report shows that Blackbeard had been shot at least 5 times at close range and suffered at least 20 life-threatening deep sword cuts. With Blackbeard dead and being outnumbered, his surviving pirates surrendered. Depending upon the sources, about 10 pirates and 10 of the English Marines and sailors had been killed. But the accounts vary slightly. Maynard returned victorious to Virginia with Blackbeard's head displayed on the bowsprit of his sloop. Maynard found immediate fame as the man who vanquished Blackbeard, and the legend of the pirate continued. Whenever a pirate who had previously served with Blackbeard joined another ship, they were revered and respected. Then the legends started, such as Blackbeard's headless body swimming around Maynard's ship many times after being thrown overboard. Despite the great tales told about him after his death, the truth fell victim to sensationalism. His career as a pirate actually only lasted 2 years, but that was long enough to terrorize and threaten shipping commerce in the Caribbean and between the Americas and Europe. He had captured dozens of ships and had a fearsome reputation, but there is no evidence that he ever killed anyone until his final battle where he died. However, he was one of the last of his kind because by 1725, the so-called Golden Age of Piracy was over, as all the major European navies and merchant fleets combined forces to combat them. The main source that created the various legends of Blackbeard was the biography of him written by Captain Charles Johnson, titled A General History of the Robberies and Murders of the Most Notorious Pirates, published in May 1724 under the pen name Nathaniel Mist. Mist or Johnson, take your pick, a former sailor, printer, and journalist in London, based his tales on trial records, newspaper reports, and personal contact with retired pirates. Mist created the legend of a bloodthirsty demon raping and murdering his way into history. The book was a bestseller, requiring a second edition to be published within a few months, and another printing in 1725 and a fourth printing in 1726. The last edition was expanded, and many of Blackbeard's life and exploits were embellished and in fact fabricated and sensationalized, which is where most people gathered their history of the man. Also, Robert Louis Stevenson increased the sensationalizing of pirates when he wrote Kidnapped and Treasure Island, fictional books that captured the mind of people around the world. Ironically, what is overlooked is the fact that a pirate ship was the only true democracy in the world of monarchs and despots until the Age of Empires ended. Crews elected and even fired their captains, so it was the wise, disciplined, charismatic, and successful man who maintained his command. There was no segregation, no class distinctions, all were equal under the pirate code, as they all shared the danger and the glory, and no one ever walked the plank. The greatest surviving myth was Blackbeard's buried treasure, which has never been found and probably never existed. The Queen Anne's Revenge was discovered off the coast of North Carolina by divers in 1996, and hundreds of artifacts have been recovered in the years since. Such historical treasures include navigational devices such as sextants, cannons, pistols, dinnerware, and a sword hilt. Also recovered not long afterward was the ship's bell, cast and dated to 1705, a Swedish-made cannon dated to 1713. There is also good evidence that Blackbeard was also a slave trader, but also freed many slaves of the ships he captured to become a part of his crew, as had Black Caesar. Many of these relics are now on permanent display at the North Carolina Maritime Museum in nearby Beaufort, where I, your humble correspondent and narrator, currently live. If you come to visit, it is well worth a stop. Thank you for watching this episode of Forgotten History. If you liked what you saw, please click like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to assist with the ever-increasing cost of production, please consider becoming a channel member and joining our Patreon page. Please check out our merchandise store. And thanks for watching.